Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and with 2025 moving out of the way, we are moving on to the 2026 elections. We have 35 seats up in the Senate, all 435 seats up in the House, and 34 governor elections up for grabs in 2026. So all of those are going to be very exciting, and we will be doing my first 2026 United States Senate prediction of the actual 2026 cycle in this video. So before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get into it. So obviously 2026 is starting to heat up. We're going to get a lot of polls of primaries, of general elections, and right now on the generic Senate ballot between the Democrat and the Republicans, Democrats lead by 3.7% on average across the country, 45.9 to 42.3. So on the map, we're going to be starting off with the safe Democratic states. These are states that are going to go to the Democrats by over 15% in 2026. In 2020, when the last seats are up, you see here that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Democratic seats went safe Democrat in 2020. I believe 4 out of those 7 will be safe Democrat. Oregon, Delaware, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. New Hampshire will not, because Jeanne Shaheen's retiring and she was kind of a electoral juggernaut in New Hampshire. And New Jersey and Illinois will be not, because Dick Durbin is first of all retiring, and also Illinois and New Jersey both shifted hard to the right. If you look here in 2024, Illinois shifted 6 points to the right, and New Jersey shifted 10 points to the right. So yeah, once again, starting off with my predictions for the state Democratic states: Oregon, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Delaware. I will be adding another one to the column, however, and that is going to be Colorado. Colorado flipped this. John Hickenlooper flipped this from Cory Gardner in 2020. John Hickenlooper actually is pretty popular in the state of Colorado. I think he will win it by around 17%, making this state pretty blue. Colorado actually shifted pretty much to the left for a couple races. Actually, no. Well, but in 2022 it shifted to the left, and in 2024 it barely shifted to the right when you compare it to like other states. So, I think Colorado is going to go safe Democrat with John Hickenlooper. Now, for the safe Republican states, all of these will be safe Republican from 2020, except for Nebraska, because Nebraska has a totally new matchup that's going to be interesting. So Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia are going to be safe Republican. And I'm also going to add in Montana there, because Steve Daines is going to have a much better matchup before. Because in 2020, Steve Bullock was the Democratic nominee, the former Democratic governor of the state of Montana. You're not going to have a good Democrat in 2026, however. So there we're going to Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. Oh, sorry, not Mississippi, because that went likely Republican in 2020, and Cindy Hyde-Smith is just a really bad senator. So yeah, these are the safe Republican seats and the safe Democratic seats. Republicans now sit at 42, and Democrats sit at 39. Let's get into the likely Democratic states now. These are going to be the ones that go to Democrats by between 5 and 15%. So, obviously, Illinois, New Jersey, and New Hampshire. These were the 3 that I put in that were in safe Democrat in 2020 by moving them down to likely Democrat in 2026. So, Illinois, you have an interesting primary in the Democrats, but the major favorite is going to be Representative Raja Krishnamoorthi. Republicans, they don't have many good candidates, but you do have Rod Blagojevich, the very disgraced former governor of Illinois, who was a former Democrat but was pardoned by Donald Trump. So it would be interesting if he hopped into the race. And yeah, but Illinois is going to be likely Democrat by 14%. I think, yeah, Krishnamoorthi is going to win by 14, mainly because of the right-wing shifts and also Durbin retiring. So there's Illinois for you. I'm not sure if they have any, they don't have any polling averages on race to the White House for Illinois, but they sure do For New Hampshire, which we'll get to in a sec, but for New Jersey, you have incumbent Democratic Senator Cory Booker running for re-election. He beat a pretty unknown Republican by, 16% in 2020? Yeah. In 2026, he's probably going to go up against Edward Durr, former state senator. But I think Booker should easily win by double digits. It's just that there was a major rightward shift in the state of New Jersey and New York as well in 2024. So just because of that, that's going to bring Cory Booker down a bit, just a tad bit, and that tad bit is going to make it under safe. So now for the state of New Hampshire. This one's big because you have somewhat of a swing state, just slightly leans Democrat. You have Jeanne Shaheen, the incumbent senator, being retiring. So the main Democrat is really going to be Chris Pappas from New Hampshire's 1st congressional district. This district went to Pappas by only 8.1%, so that does leave somewhat of an interesting seat open. And yeah, so I would say instead of Republicans in the primary, like Scott Brown and Johnny Sununu, I think Scott Brown, because he's the worst candidate in the general and also less favored to win the primary, I would say Scott Brown I would advise him to drop out and run for House in 2026 for Papa's seat. I don't think he would win, but it would definitely help more than him just running for Senate, because you have Sununu getting the endorsements from a lot of Republican senators, and Sununu also wins like every single poll against Scott Brown. The other Republican in the race, Dan Innes, a state senator, withdrew and endorsed Sununu. He is also running for re-election, which is probably the smart move as well. So it's going to be an interesting one, but if you look at these matchups in New Hampshire, you see here that when Pappas goes up against Sununu, you see that he only wins by 4.9%, which is a lean Democratic margin, but just barely. I think it will go likely Democrat. I think Pappas would win by 6%, and I think Sununu would win the primary. 6% win against Sununu. But you see when Pappas goes up against Brown, you see it's a double-digit win, a 12.1% win for Chris Pappas when he goes up against Scott Brown. So definitely the smart move here is to nominate Johnny Sununu. But now for the other likely Democratic seats, I'm going to put New Mexico, Virginia, Minnesota, and those are going to be it. So those as well. You have Minnesota, you have incumbent Democratic Senator Tina Smith retiring. So Democrats, they have a primary between Lieutenant Governor Penny Flanagan and Minnesota's 2nd Representative Angie Craig. Angie Craig, it's going to be hard to win. First of all, she's losing in polling, and also she's from somewhat of a swing district. I am impressed how she did improve between 2022 and 2024 by 8 whole points when the state swung to the right by like 5. Angie Craig, she's from a swing district, which is very moderate, very establishment, which really doesn't help her in a primary among a Democratic base, a statewide Democratic Party, and a more progressive candidate that appeals to more voters and is also statewide, who holds a statewide position. Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota obviously is going to do better than a moderate state representative, Angie Craig, in primary. Also, Flanagan, this seat's like going to go Democrat either way, because Republicans, they have no good candidates. Minnesota Republicans statewide are really bad. They're probably going to nominate the one they nominated in 2024 to go up against Amy Klobuchar again, Royce White, who's very controversial. And besides that, they have like Jim Nash, a state rep. But I don't think Republicans stand much of a chance. So I think Flanagan is going to be pretty easily nominated, and I'm going to put this race D+9. So for New Mexico, you have Ben Ray Lujan running for re-election. He won by 6 points in 2020, but in 2024, during the New Mexico Senate race, Martin Heinrich won by double digits. I think that's going to really help help Lujan. Lujan isn't that good compared to Heinrich, but I think he's still going to be able to win around the same as Heinrich. First of all, because I don't think there should be many Heinrich, whoever the Republican. I don't think they're going to change their votes to the Republican in 2026, and also because of the expected blue wave in 2026. So I think Lujan's going to win by probably 9% as well. So now we go to Virginia. Virginia, you have Mark Warner running for re-election. The only Republican that could beat him is Glenn Youngkin, and I believe, I don't think he's going to run. Republicans are probably going to nominate Bryce Reeves, a state senator, and also he ran for lieutenant governor of Virginia in 2017 in the Republican primary. He lost by like how much? But that was probably good because he only lost by like 2%. And then Joe Vogel ended up losing the general by like 5. But that's not the point here. Bryce Reeves, he's actually a pretty strong candidate on the general level, but I think Warner wins by 7 because it is going to be a blue ripple year at least. And Warner's way stronger than Tim Kaine, the guy who still won by almost 9% in 2024. So, yeah, I think that's it for the likely Democratic seats. That brings the Democratic total up to 45. For the likely Republican states, I'm going to put Kansas, Texas, Alaska, Mississippi, South Carolina, and yeah, I think that's it. So, and Ohio and Florida, because these are two special elections that are happening. Florida, they appointed Ashley Moody as a Republican, the Attorney General of Florida, to replace Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And in Ohio, they replaced now Vice President J.D. Vance with Lieutenant Governor John Husted. I'm going to put both of those races in likely Republican as well, along with obviously South Carolina, Mississippi, Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, Alaska, and Iowa. So, Nebraska, it was nowhere near this close in 2020. In 2024, Ben Sasse was replaced with Pete Ricketts, who won by 25%. But in 2026, you have independent Dan Osborne being basically the Democratic nominee. Because Democrats, they will not be recruiting a candidate for this race. And the Democratic chair of the Nebraska Democrats endorsed Dan Osborne. So Dan Osborne, in 2024, he actually ran for the other Nebraska seat that was up back then, and he only lost by 6.7%, when the other Democrat in the special race with Pete Ricketts back then lost by 25. So obviously he's a very strong candidate in Nebraska. He overperformed Kamala Harris statewide in the state of Nebraska by, let's see here, by how much is that? 14%. So obviously he's very strong, but will it be enough to flip the seat? No, I don't think so. I think Pete Ricketts is also stronger than Deb Fischer, so I think Ricketts will beat Dan Osborne by around 7%. Kansas, Roger Marshall's going to win by like 12 again. South Carolina, Lindsey Graham's going to win by like 8 because he actually did some wild stuff this time around. He's still going to be easily able to win. And I don't think he's facing any primary challengers. Also back in 2020, Jamie Harrison poured like $100 million in this race for no reason because it was his race and he was the DNC chair. But Republicans, they have they're not primary challenging him. They were, Ralph Norman, he's running for governor, and also Nancy Mace is running for governor. So, I think Mississippi, Cindy Hyde Smith. She only won by 10% in 2020 because she's just such a horrible candidate. She was running against a Clinton-era age Democrat who was also way more progressive than Mississippi black voters. So, in 2026, she's not going to be able to win by safe margin. I'm sorry. Mississippi's not shifting to the right after 2020. I think she's going to win by like 12% though. But obviously still really bad for Mississippi because Cindy Hyde Smith just really sucks. But that does, with these likely Republican seats, that does bring Republicans over 50. They're at 51. But for Ohio, actually no, we'll talk about Alaska first. Alaska, you could have Mary Peltola run against incumbent Republican Senator Dan Sullivan. Obviously more MAGA than Lisa Murkowski, the other Republican senator from Alaska. But let's see if they have a polling aggregate on here. Alaska. Yes, they do. And it's actually a way closer race than expected. But these are outliers with Peltola up by 2 and Peltola up by 3 from Alaska Survey Research. I think they do lean partisanly to the left. And the average is only Sullivan's plus 0.8, but I mean, come on, it's going to be a larger win in Alaska. I think Sullivan wins by 6. No, I think he wins by like 9 against anybody besides Peltola, and wins by like 4 with Peltola. And it's honestly not even confirmed that Peltola runs. She could just run for her old House seat or for governor. I do think she is leaning towards Senate, so that's why I am going to have Sullivan winning by 6 right now. For Texas, you have incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn kind of fighting for his life in a Republican primary against now somewhat disgraced Republican Attorney General of the state of Texas, Ken Paxton. He crashed in polling after his wife filed for divorce and stuff about his mistress came out. Because, I mean, he was beating Cornyn by like double digits before that. But now Cornyn's actually coming way closer. And you also have Republican Representative Wesley Hunt now in the race. He is MAGA, just without the baggage that Ken Paxton carries. But he is coming in third because he doesn't really stand out. I think Cornyn and Paxton are going to make it to a runoff. Hunt, I think he does take more voters away from Paxton than Cornyn, in my opinion. But right now, the averages do have Paxton up by 2.6%. I think it is going to be a Paxton versus Democratic matchup. The Democrats, they also have a very interesting primary between state representative and self-claimed progressive James Tallarico going up against establishment former Representative Colin Allred, who ran for Senate against Ted Cruz in 2024. He lost in 2024 by 8.5%. So I think Democrats, if they do want to win, they should nominate Tallarico. If you look at polling here in the state of Texas, when you look at Allred versus, no, just look at Paxton. So for generic Democrat versus, actually no, this is bad because there was one poll for generic Democrat versus Paxton. But if you look at, there's no Tallarico, but yeah, that's actually interesting. Tallarico. If we look at Allred versus, there's no Allred versus Paxton on here. We'll look at Wikipedia for the general election. If you look at this, you see Colin Allred would beat Ken Paxton in a couple polls, but Ken Paxton does beat him by like 5 in these. It is going to be a tighter race with Paxton versus a Democrat than Cornyn, because Cornyn beats Allred in every single poll compared to Paxton losing like half of these polls against Allred. If you look at Tallarico, Cornyn does still beat Tallarico, but it is a closer race. I think, if Paxton goes up against Tallarico, I think Paxton just barely wins, so I like the Republican by 5% against Democrat, either Allred or Tallarico, but it would be a really stupid move if Democrats nominated Jasmine Crockett, because if she runs, she probably will win the nomination, but that would be a really stupid move, in my opinion. Now, you go to Florida. This is not going to be a tight race at all. Ashley Moody is beat like the Democrat in polling. This is just random Democrat. The nominee probably isn't going to be Jennifer Jenkins, but Ashley Moody beat Jenkins by 11 on average. So, yeah, I mean, it's not going to be close. Ashley Moody's an electoral juggernaut in the state of Florida. She even overperformed Ron DeSantis back in 2022 when DeSantis was going for governor and Moody was going for attorney general. So she's going to win by double digits, I think by 12%. But now for Ohio. Ohio, you have former Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, who lost re-election in 2024 in the red wave to MAGA Republican Bernie Moreno by 3.6%. You have him running in 2026 against Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted. Jon Husted isn't that MAGA. He's kind of establishment, not really populist at all. You see here, there's actually nothing on here for Ohio. Actually, no, yeah, there is. It's right here. Brown versus Husted. Right now, Husted is actually just barely up. I'm actually going to move this one to lean Republican right now. I think Husted's going to win by like 4%. Right now, the polling average on here shows Husted up by only 2.5, with a poll from YouGov with Brown up by 1. So this one's going to be one of those interesting races where you could definitely see an upset with Sherrod Brown. One of these Rust Belt kind of Democrats. So it will be an interesting race. And it will be the shocker of the night if Sherrod Brown makes his return to the United States Senate. In Florida, not in Florida, but in Iowa. incumbent Republican, also a very unpopular senator, Joni Ernst, is retiring, which is honestly good for Republicans because they honestly could have lost that if Democrats nominated a good candidate. But Republicans, they're probably going to nominate Representative Ashley Hinson from the 2nd District. This is a safe Republican district. Let me pull up the House map. Yeah, went to Hinson by 15.6% in 2024, so not really a risk for Republicans here. But, yeah, Orange only won by a 6% in 2020, so it is a smart move. And also, I don't really know why she retired. Probably because she really just wanted to get out of politics. But Democrats, they have an interesting race. And you have Zach Walz, Josh Turek, Richard Schurzan, Bob Kraus. The only 3 candidates that are big are honestly Zach Walz, Turek, and Sage. Because Kraus and Schurzan, they're former state representatives. And, yeah, this is interesting. Schurzan and Kraus haven't been in the state house for like 40 years. And Schurzan was literally a Senate candidate in Arizona in 2016, 2018. So it's going to be between Turek, Walz, and Sage. Sage is the more progressive candidate. I think Walz, he's the most experienced. Josh Turek, he's not a bad candidate. J.D. Scholten, he ran for a bit. He dropped out and endorsed his pretty good friend, Josh Turek. Jackie Norris, she was also running for a bit. She's a chair of the Des Moines School Board and the former chief of staff to Michelle Obama. So, it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be an interesting primary. I do not know why they are not polling this one, because it is going to be interesting. But in the general election, I think Ashley Hinson is going to win by 7%. So now we're going to move on to our final 4 states. We're going to go to the swing state of Michigan first. Incumbent Democrat Gary Peters is retiring. He won against now Representative John James, who's running for governor in 2026, by only 1.7%. John James was a really good candidate. 2026, in the Republican primary, they're going to nominate a candidate for Senate in 2024 and nominee. And former Representative Mike Rogers, he only lost by less than a percent against Representative Alyssa Slotkin back in 2024. He is probably the best recruit Republicans could have had. But Democrats, they have an interesting primary. You had a new poll come out today, actually. It's going to be a 3-way primary between Democratic Socialist Abdul El-Sayed, Haley Stevens, very establishment, pro-AIPAC, pro-Israel. And then you have Mallory McMorrow. She's sort of that state kind of local figure. And she's actually kind of a compromise. She's not a Democratic Socialist, but she also doesn't support Israel. She even called Gaza a genocide, so that is really interesting. Mallory McMorrow, I think, she did get second place for the first time in a while since that Maple. Today, this poll was commissioned by a Republican pollster, Rosetta Stone Communications. It was released November 6th, so there's that. And McMorrow is only 1 point behind Haley Stevens. That is actually the closest that another candidate has gotten to behind Haley Stevens ever. And Abdul El-Sayed also sat above 20 points, but you have 29% undecided. It's really going to come down to if these undecideds are actually going to lean to a Democratic Socialist or a very establishment Haley Stevens, or they're going to go for a compromise, Mallory McMorrow. I think McMorrow electorally would be the best candidate because she appeals enough to both sides to get their votes. So, it's going to be interesting. Also for the general election, when Rosetta, Rosetta, it's a Republican-leaning pollster, so I wouldn't trust them in the general election, but they have Rogers beating Stevens by 7, beating Abdul El-Sayed by 14, and McMorrow by 7 as well. You have 15% and 13% undecideds for the Stevens and McMorrow matchups, but you do have a much larger 24% undecided for the El-Sayed matchup. So that is something interesting to point out. But I think the Democrat, right now, obviously she is still the favorite, Haley Stevens, but things can change. And I think she is going to be the favorite in the general election as well. I think she's going to win by 3% against Mike Rogers. So, now we're going to go to North Carolina. This one is currently held by Republican Senator Thom Tillis. Thom Tillis, he is retiring. Republicans are going to nominate former RNC chair Michael Whatley, and Democrats are likely going to nominate former governor of North Carolina Roy Cooper, who overperforms Democrats in this state. These are two very electoral juggernauts. Whatley, as RNC chair, he knows how to run a good campaign, and Cooper, he knows the state of North Carolina very well. So, honestly, I think North Carolina is going to go lean Democrat, first of all, because there's probably going to be at least a blue ripple. And once again, right now what we're seeing here is that Cooper's doing a lot better in polling, and he's also raising a lot more money in fundraising. So you see here the average 42.1. I think that's around my prediction as well. So they have D plus 3.9. I have D plus, I think Cooper wins by 3.5. So there's North Carolina for you. I'm going to go to Georgia now. Incumbent Democrat Jon Ossoff is going to probably win. Republicans, they have somewhat of a split primary right now, but the favorite, you do see a favorite, and that is Mike Collins. He's running ahead of Buddy Carter, representative from Georgia's 1st, and Derek Dooley, who's been endorsed by Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. So right now, in Georgia, you see here that when Ossoff goes up against Collins, he wins by 1.3. Very close matchup. When he goes up against Buddy Carter, that's a much larger margin. 43.7 to 40.2. That's a 3.5% margin. And does he have a Dooley matchup? I don't think he does. But you do see here Collins is definitely going to be the best candidate to take on Jon Ossoff. I think it is going to be pretty close here. And honestly, matching polling, I think Ossoff's going to win by 1.8%. Right now, this is my first 2026 cycle prediction. And now we're going to move on to our final seat, and that is Maine. This is currently held by incumbent Republican Senator Susan Collins. And she hasn't even run yet. And we'll see, but she is probably going to jump into the race. Democrats, you did have Graham Plattner being the favorite in the primary for a bit, in the progressive, some call him Maine Mamdani. But his kind of ambitions kind of got ruined when he was found with a pro-NZ Germany tattoo. Many NZ Germany soldiers had that tattoo, and he kind of even admitted to him knowing that the tattoo was affiliated with that. So that kind of caused, honestly, not even that establishment, Governor Jeanette Mills, to surge in polling. Mills really isn't even that establishment. She's not even that pro-Israel. It's just that the pro-Palestinian Democrats really wanted to push Plattner, which, I get it. But right now, Democrats, they really want to nominate Jeanette Mills, I'd say, because the only poll we got after these scandals were from the National Republican Senate Committee and SoCal. SoCal had Mills up by 5, and the NRSC worded the question and said the tattoo was anti-Israel, which does show that Maine Democrats are more anti-Israel. But when you word it correctly, like SoCal did, that Plattner had a Nazi tattoo, Plattner does lose. So in the general election, you see here from Zenith Research, Plattner would tie with Collins, while Mills would win by 5. So I think Democrats are going to nominate Mills at this point, unless they do something insane, and they want to throw away a Senate seat so they can prove something in a primary. But I think Mills would win by 2.7% right now against Susan Collins. So this is my first 2026 United States Senate prediction post the 2025 elections. Make sure to subscribe, guys, like the video, and once again, I'm going to give member shout-outs to the 2 members who actually bought the memberships, Kentucky Politics and the Korean characters, I think, because I can't read that because their name is in Korean characters. But yeah, anyways, this was a fun video to make. Please make sure to subscribe and like the video once again, and I will see you next time, guys. Goodbye.